Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching us from live, and especially if you're watching this on replay. Thank you for joining. My name is Ola Adeyemo, and this is the ERG resource sessions. I love to host these conversations because it allows us to dive in deep with experts around different fields and resources that could be very helpful to support your ERG work within your organization and DEI leaders as well who are driving these work and initiative within their companies, and it allows us to just cross collaborate, look for opportunities to find potential partners. So if you're looking for the previous sessions, they are on YouTube. They are always recorded, and the link is on the event info. I would also drop it in the chat when we're done, um, because I'm not sure what platform you're watching this on, but thanks for being here. Our guest today is Dr. Kenya, and I think it's very important for me to read a little bit of his bio, just because Dr. Kenya brings 23 years of experience working in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, with more than 14 years working with executives on global diversity and inclusion, barrier analysis, culture awareness, ethics and compliance, and human resources. And before his current position at Chemonix as the Global Senior Director of DEI, Dr. Duggar spent 2 years as Deputy Director and Senior Advisor in the Center for the Army Profession, Diversity and Leadership, advising on DEI programming, leadership development, and training. He continues to believe in education and is also, in addition to all of that, an adjunct professor at Southern New Hampshire University, where he teaches diversity, organizational leadership, and human resource management curriculum, emphasizing the importance of multicultural awareness. So, Dr. Kenya, I wanted to read that, which I don't usually do, because I think our conversation today is going to touch on a couple of things, and I wanted to really set that context to the wealth of experience and variety that you bring to this conversation as a DEI expert. And I'm already seeing some people showing you some love in the chat, so that's great. And this topic is just timely and appropriate. As you know, over the past 3 years, DEI and ERG are sort of taking some turns, and then it's taking another turn because it's that 3 year mark, right? And so I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you. So how are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you for having me. It's nice out here in the DMV DC area, and I'm excited to be here to talk about ERGs and the DEI journey and how the cross collaboration and leaders out there in the space that are doing great things and how they continue to move this pendulum in the direction of inclusivity for all people, regardless of how they show up. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah. And so I did a little bit of background on you, but is there anything else you want to share about your current role, especially as it relates to ERGs, which of course I would like to hear about?
That's so great. So, as a senior director of Commodity International, I oversee a platform of a lot of different things. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is the employee research group. We have a 6 employee research group looking for the Black diaspora, LGBTQIA, disabilities, veteran, the gender spectrum, everything for Asia Pacific Islander, and we're developing 2 other ones that are in the pipeline, kind of in our Middle Eastern region and our Latin American region. So we're working on those right now. So we try to be very inclusive of everyone. The thing about our ERG is that we're a global organization, so we have to understand that what looks right or what works for, say, in the Western world, United States, does not resonate in our teammates that are in Asia or teammates that are in Latin America, in different places. So we have to understand that every region under the ERG concept has a different kind of diaspora, different kind of culture. And so you got to be really cognizant of bringing those people into your fold, and at the same time, not alienate their culture, trying to mix with our culture and like that. So it's really a fine line to talk, but the values are intertwined. So I really try to do that and do a nice balance and act of that ERG situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was in a conversation recently with somebody who is in the UK who was saying the same thing. Like, there's so much focus on the US. We are just getting started. And I think also that awareness of, um, as a, as a country, where is your site? As a company, sorry, where do you have the majority of your population? And don't, not forgetting to include the other
Yeah,
regions, as you said, right? And excluding the regions where you have seemingly smaller
hmm
populations. We still need to have everybody be a part of the conversation.
exactly. That is very important. Our organization, we're in 80 countries, and so U.S. is just a small diaspora
Ah,
of our other teammates, and we're not a monolithic, so everybody's different. So you have to meet people where they show up, and actually at the same time be inclusive of their cultures and understand their differences and how they value things and how they look at things. So it's amazing, and also at the same time it makes you think outside the box. Uh,
right.
and you cannot do that in the vacuum. I have a lot of colleagues across the world that have helped me, that continues to help me drive inclusivity with development and mentorship programs, like Dr. Linda Bing, one of my greatest colleagues, and she has a great program to help us develop mentorship and drive mentorship in all different levels. So we look at different platforms. So you cannot do it. It is cross collaboration across the board.
Oh yeah, Dr. Bing. Yeah, she's she's on right now, and I've also had the honor and privilege of chatting with her as well. So thank you for sharing that. So let's go back a couple of decades,
Okay.
right? For us newish in the DEI space, I think what are some of the things that you've seen that has really changed? Can you walk us through a little bit of
Yeah.
that journey? What it was and what it is now?
Perfect. Yeah, I'm showing my age right now, so you're gonna make me show my age, but I'm okay with that. I embrace my age, and so you have to understand the way ERG really the way it developed is a generational concept. I am a Gen Xer, okay, and boomers and Gen Xers had kind of that mentality of work a 40, 50, 60 hours straight week, go home and repeat rent-free cycle. There wasn't really a balance between, work-life balance. That work-life balance was a concept, but we wasn't living that work-life balance concept. We were just doing our job. And we didn't understand the thing of trauma, generational trauma, psychological trauma. Those were something that we just compartmentalized, and it took it home, and sometimes it unraveled at the house, or you just kept compartmentalizing and compartmentalizing and compartmentalizing. If you look at the concept of that, is like, okay, got it. And the ERG started forming that concept as a place of community. People came together to talk about things, how they feel, and more like a social aspect. And that was kind of the really ERG foundation. It wasn't really a force multiplier until organizations started to move the needle and start seeing that I have an organization with diverse population, with diverse characteristics, and I need to find a way to leverage that. And people have to understand as the process continues to move, organizations start taking notice and start saying, hey, I want the best talent. And I know the best talent is not sitting right here in my front yard or my backyard. I have to go to different parts of the world or United States or wherever you're sitting at and search and scour for diverse talent because they're not always easily accessible through the regular platforms or like that. So the ERG became a place to say, hey, I want to bring more diverse talent into my organization because it's good for my brand. It's good for my corporate social responsibility. It's good for a plethora of things, but I don't know where to look. You're like, I don't know where to look. You're like, no, I don't know where to look. I don't have access or I don't have a network or a pipeline to bring in diverse talent. Do you know somebody? Or do you know somebody in your network? And so it went from a social conversation to a more like a networking conversation. So I started saying, hey, I know my job is hiring this, that, come on board and join us. So for a network. So we start becoming networking, more networker. Now we fast forward, ERG really started getting their stride after the murder of George Floyd. And I can tell you, because once we witnessed live the death of a person, trauma started to unravel for a lot of communities, just not the Black community. It came from all kinds of communities, a lot of immigrant communities, a lot of communities from LGBTQIA, all communities that thrive started to say, started to talk about their trauma more.
Right.
And organizations are saying we have to acknowledge their trauma. We have to provide them a safe space to talk about their trauma, because you think you can just leave your house with all that trauma and stop it at the front door. It's not at the store, stop at work. It's not possible. We got to provide them resources to help them deal with their trauma so they can have a better place to work, a better atmosphere, psychological safety. At the same time, we understood that let's start thinking about how could we make this as a business concept, because diversity brings difference of thought. Difference of thought brings access to resource for different other people, and it's reflective. I like to come to an organization that I look from top to bottom. I see people that look like me, or who identify like me, and who have characteristics like me. And those ERGs start becoming more of a business concept. So it has progressed from a social to a network to a business concept, all along bringing all the other things with it to what we add right now. And what will be for 10 years further down the line is just a mystery. What would that be 10 years down the line?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I was recently in conversation with somebody who said, "Well, I thought ERGs were just DEI, a part of the DEI group, and so it's not really um, a supportive part of the company, a resource for employee." I guess the person's question kind of made me stop and reflect back on companies that I've worked with where ERGs really stemmed from affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
And so the groups that were started were tied to the affirmative action groups and laws. So we can't forget that even though ERG started as sort of the affinity social, when companies started taking it seriously, they started tying it to affirmative action required reports, right, and groups, so that could help them gather the results. And so I think right now, there's a company where I had issue with creating a working parents employee resource group. And this was before 2020, right? Because
Right.
they basically were like, well, working parents is not a group. Working parents is not an underrepresented group. And I remembered saying, but it's an unheard group.
Mm-hmm.
There's a large population of your employees that are working parents. You don't have the data.
Right.
First, nobody's tracking anything that tells you, because there's nothing in our data fields, right? So you don't know who is a parent, but that doesn't even matter. You know, without being told, that there are parents in the company and there are
Mm-hmm.
people who are thinking about having kids that need to know what's available. You have resources that you're providing them, but nobody knows how to access it. So I think that's important too, as we talk about the trends and all of the groups that are being started now. There's a whole lot of ERG groups now. People are
Yeah.
leveraging it for different things. And so I wanted to ask you a question, because you said you were in the works on launching 2 new ones. So
Mm-hmm.
I think my question was going to be, how do you know which ones you need? Because
Gotcha.
I know, I mean, I've worked with a company that has 150 people and they had like 15 ERGs. I just thought,
Yeah.
how did you get to that? Like diving deep into, how did you choose to start 15 ERGs when you have 150 employees,
Right.
right? Is it in the numbers? How did you determine that you needed 2 more?
So I would say it's the numbers. I would say, be honest, the numbers really should not matter, and I'll tell you why. It's the if we only base ERGs off numbers, then
Mhm.
we're missing a population, and we're not giving a voice to a population. Just
Right.
because if I was in an organization, so here it's like this: if I was in an organization and there was only a handful of people who looked like me or identified as being a Black cisgender male, and everybody else was 95% different, does my voice doesn't matter because I don't have the numbers to show up, because my affirmative action report doesn't say I have enough number of people. It's not about that. It's about the passion for people to bring inclusive and make you aware of things within their culture.
Correct.
It's numbers is fine. The more numbers, the better. And that's a true statement. But numbers should not be the defining factor when you say let's start an ERG. It should be the passion and the as leaders. Here's the catch: as leaders, you want to be as inclusive as possible of all diasporas within your organization because it helps you attract talent. Just because people say there's not a lot of us, what that do that mean? That mean our value should not matter, how we show up should not matter, our psychological safety should not matter because there's not a lot of us to count. And who are we counting? How many? What is the metrics? Is like 15 because of the ADA says 15 for disabilities and things of file report like that. No, numbers should not matter. It's the passion, and leadership should say, let's find ways to be more inclusive. Let's find ways to have more representation. Let's find ways to increase our brand, our corporate social responsibility. Let's find things that embrace different cultures to help make our organization greater because diversity is a force multiplier. And when you get a group of people that can have a seat at the table to tell you what goes on in their community, how they identify, how they experience life, and how they want to be treated in a sense, then it makes your organization even better. It makes it better.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like numbers will happen anyway, because even if you have one person or two people representing a group, you are going to be exposed and be aware of some of the barriers to the numbers growth, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So as a leader, if you have this, you have the responsibility or an oversight over the entire organization. If there's a particular number that is not growing, if you're truly interested in growing that number, the first thing is to listen and learn why, what barriers are in place with our systems, within our policies and processes as an organization.
There is a thing. So I always tell DEI leaders that are trying to expand their ERGs, when have you done a DEI barrier analysis? When you start looking at a barrier analysis, you're seeing where are people placed within your organization. You try to say, what is the barrier that's stopping people from coming to my organization? And so you got to do a real analysis. You got to say, hey, this is why we don't attract this much talent. This is why we're not looking because if we don't know where to look for some talent, then we will not even advance our talent just because we say we use this platform or that platform and that's it. That's surfacey recruitment. I need to get into the chambers of commerces. I need to get into the HBCUs. I need to get into the affiliation groups. I get to my local leaders and start searching out talent to make people say, hey, be aware, because it's all about awareness. But I cannot tell you where that talent pool is at because I might not identify or I don't have that network or that bridge. So it's always important to say, bring more people in, show me where the talent's at. How can we attract that talent? Because we're in a global, I don't care where your organization sits, everybody in this world is in a global race for talent. You cannot tell me one organization in this world that doesn't care about sourcing the best talent possible, because they wouldn't exist. And the best talent is not always in your backyard, and we're not a monolithic. So you got to use your networking to go source out that talent. And if you don't know, ask your ERGA. I'm trying to find more diverse talent. Do you have a network of people that I can talk to? That's what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Natsumi has a question that actually fits into what I wanted to talk about next, which is the challenge with balancing who is raising up their hand. Because employee resource group, of course, company supported, but employee led and employee driven. So I think there's always that balance of, some companies will just wake up and say, we're starting ERGs, we're starting 10 ERGs, we're looking for people to lead. And I kind of feel like I know there's a huge piece on psychological safety around that and the company culture. Because if you can mandate ERGs to start in a monolith as a leader and expect people to raise up their hand if there's a lot of unaddressed issues in your organization. So Natsumi's question is, so grateful to be listening to these conversation. I understand what Dr. Doga is saying about the numbers not being the determinant, but what steps can be taken when there's a group that leadership wants to support through an ERG, but none of the employees who might participate are interested in leading that ERG.
Okay, so that's a great. Hey, Nasumi, thank you for the question. Great question. That's the crux of the ERG because it's all voluntary, and so you cannot mandate it. But here's the thing: you can do as a leader. You can incentivize people to do ERG work. Like we incentivize people in our organization, top to bottom, to do DEI work. That means we give you 8 hours a month that you can take away from your regular 9 to 5 job and do DEI work. The problem is organizations that doesn't want people don't want to do it because they figure it's an extra, not I don't say burden, but it's an extra responsibility. It's an extra responsibility on top of their regular job. So organizations got to make time for them to do it. And so that's why people don't want to get so if I have to work 40 hours a week, and then on top of that, I gotta find another 10 hours a week to try to start an ERG. I'm like, wait a minute, this don't make sense. This don't make sense. So organizations have to say, okay, listen to this. We will incentivize you by giving you time to do ERG work that will not take away from your regular work. It will not require you to work extra hours. You got to incentivize people. And at the same time, they have to, the people that want to start an ERG and might not have the leadership, it's all about asking your other ERGs there to say some of the challenges you are facing, maybe you can help me, because you don't always got to have an ERG to be an advocate, because it's always intersectionality. It's always intersectionality. I'm pretty sure you can find something that aligns with that. And then you can say, okay, well, I might not, my makeup, physical makeup, or my characteristics might not be in line exactly with this ERG, but a lot of their issues or a lot of the things they bring to awareness are the same things I want to advocate for. And then you got to become more in numbers. So you have what's called cross-sectional ERGs, which are ERGs that are not holistically one. They can be a cross-section between 2 other things or 3 other things, and that's how you can do it. And it's less resources to start a cross-sectional ERG. So you can say, if I say I am identified as a Black cisgender male, and there's people that are disabled, I can say, hey, let's bring you on to our thing and talk about disabled people or identify as Black, disability, and cross-section, so you don't got to do all the leg lifting all the time. So you can attach yourself in an allyship. I would say that is an easy win until you start getting your legs up under you. And then you can say, okay, I think we got enough people now. We got the foundation right. Let's break off and do our own set by ourselves. But I guess it all comes to how the organization incentivizes you and gives you that freedom to do this. And also, a lot of people who say they want to have an ERG but don't have leadership, because it's not a top-down really push. Because to start an ERG, there's 4 fundamental principles I always tell everybody to start ERG. First and foremost, you need an executive sponsor. You need somebody to advocate for you when you're not in the room at the most executive level. Secondly, you need a charter that tells you what your ERG is and how does it align to the strategic plan of the organization. Third, you need a budget, a dedicated budget, not a little bit of money here and there. You need a dedicated budget that you can count on each year that's going to be there to help you drive home some of the activities. And fourth, you need a work plan. So it goes from just being a social network to a network that brings resources in, brings different people in, and also advocates for you in positions that you usually don't advocate for. So you need those 4 principles for the ERG to be successful. So a lot of people don't have them. They start an ERG with no budget, no executive sponsor, no charter, and they're missing one of those valuable pieces. That's why they don't be successful. It takes all 4 of those things to be successful.
Yeah, no, and I think you summed it up correctly, because if there's interest in starting ERGs and some of these things are not established or clear, nobody's going to raise up their hand, because why would I sign up to do extra work when I'm being set up to fail, right? And I've seen people where, in this kind of situation, to identify some key performers, top performers, and actually sit them down and talk to them about in this kind of incentives to get them to step up and lead. Because even starting an ERG from scratch, it's a lot more work
Mhm.
than asking for a lead to
Right.
an existing ERG. So I think to Natsumi's question is identifying people and actually sitting down with them and exploring, would you be interested in helping us kick this off? Here are some of the things that we're going to put in place to support you. And that way people are clearer, also doing things like informational session. If people don't know and they are not a part of the decision to start the ERG, you can't expect people just to raise up their hand
Correct.
to support it. So yeah, and also you also talked about intersectionality. I think that's also a big one, um, which is also kind of flowing into the future of ERGs. I have seen more ERGs now
Mhm.
beginning to take that into account, and hopefully, it's something that will be adopted across different companies. I wanted to ask though. So I feel like we're talking to two different groups, right? Those that already have ERGs
Mhm.
and who are looking for ways to get more engagement and get more results within their companies, and then those that are starting from scratch.
Mhm.
So as we kind of wrap up this 30 minutes that goes by so quickly, I wanted to see what you could share with us for both audiences, right? If you're
Okay.
starting your ERGs from scratch, you gave us some solid pillars, things that you put in place for starting. If there's anything you want to add to that, you can. But what about those that already have ERGs or have something,
Okay.
you have a group, you have a Slack group, you have affinity groups, and you're really thinking of the future. You're thinking of
Right.
taking your ERG to that next level. What are some of the things that they should
Perfect.
be thinking about?
That was a great question. And I think that's the most, I think that's the most important question of everything. You have to align your ERG to your corporate strategy, to the business strategy of the organization. You have to make sure that you are doing activities within your ERG that helps you elevate people within your organization to higher levels in the organization, the C-suite conversation. That requires to start things like mentorship program within your ERG. That requires to talk about, everybody does outreach. See, if your ERG only focuses on the HOD honor or differences, then they're missing the mark. If they only do the celebratory time, you say the Black ERG, they might do Black History Month and maybe Juneteenth, and the other 10 months they're dormant. You're missing a mark. You're missing a mark. Or any other year, LGBTQI 1 month and they miss a mark. You got to continue to find ways to improve your ERG through ways that are aligned with the business strategy, because people want to get involved with social responsibility. If you're not in the community just trying to do a reading program with underprivileged kids, if you're not in the community trying to develop mentorship programs or a mentorship program within your organization, you're missing your mark. If you're not in there with your compensation people advocating for equitable pay, then you're missing your mark. Because if you look at it on cross thing, certain populations, certain genders are not equally paid across organization. That's just the nature of the beast. You should be advocating for that. Say, why are we not being equally paid? Why are we not being? Why the equity in promotions is not across the board the same way? You have to be advocating for a business concept. Always look at your corporate strategy and align the activities that you want to do that is nested with your corporate strategy. Do not try to take it somewhere else differently, because you will get a lot more pushback. You want to align it as a business concept. And that's how you attract things. You want more people, you want more representation, more professional development, you want better pay, you want more representation in all different places of the organization. And also you want to make sure that people who show up and look like you or identify you have their psychological safety intact within the organization. Those are things that continue to keep your ERG functioning and flowing well.
Thank you. Yeah, that is, I think that's the key thing that we see companies struggling to talk about. And even ERGs, there's those that say, well, we're not here for the business. there is a point where you have to be a part of the business. It doesn't mean you are a business, you are HR or
Right.
you are a business department, but you can we can't let go of the affinity feel, right? The ARG
Mhm.
continues to be a safe space for members of the group, and that's okay. But to grow, to have greater impact, you have to be aligned with the corporate strategy, and that needs to be something the groups are willing to do, and leadership is making, like a very important point. All right. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing these. Um, is there anything you want to add around future of
Yeah,
ERGs? Just
sure.
what do you see
Well,
as we wrap up? Yeah.
so I think we kind of touched on it. I think you, I not think I know as society continues to grow, as we become more inclusive of different diasporas and different walks of life, you're gonna see a lot more. You're gonna see a lot more intersectional ERGs. You're gonna see a lot more, and they say you're stronger with numbers. You're gonna see a lot more intersectional ERGs, not affinity groups, just not sexual orientation. You'll see how the intersectionality, because you cannot split a person in half yet. We haven't got there. So if I show up as this diaspora and my lived experience is I'm a veteran, am I a veteran first or am this first, or which one influenced me? So I should have to pick which one, so you can start seeing intersectionality ERGs. So you see it with a lot of the LGBTQI community. Or am I this first or that first? And the intersectionality. So you're starting to find out. You'll see it. You probably won't, right, next 5-10 years. You probably won't see too many standalone ERGs by themselves. You'll see the intersectionality with disabled veteran ERG. Those are two different populations. You might see women veteran ERGs, or women with disabilities. You'll see the intersectionality, because nobody is kind of standalone no more, and nobody's a monolithic, and they know intersectionality is a real thing. You can point at it any day of the week, and you should not have to slice yourself in a half or a third just to be part of the ERG, and you should not take half or third of your beliefs just to fit the ERG. You should be able to bring your whole self to the organization, and the ERG should be able to support your whole self and your whole identity, and you should not have to cover. So you will see intersectional ERGs. It'll be the new. We are starting it, but you'll see about 5 years from now, it'll be intersectional ERG all day long.
Oh, that's good. I think so too. I think the conversation is ramping up a lot around that. The more people get comfortable and confident to speak up, to stand up, as the workplace population changes, the Gen Z, what am I? I'm a millennial. um, and I see that with Gen Z now. They are more outspoken, right? So there will be a lot more participation and bringing your full self. And we, as an organization, we have to give the room for them to do that. And I think ERGs will be a great way to do that. Do you also see companies from the organizational perspective? What do you see around that with leaders and corporations, small size, large size? I know a lot of people feel like, the ERG thing is going to go away. But there's also those that are embracing it. Do you see more of that happening?
Yeah. I see it every day, and I talk to my colleagues. Organizations are really understanding the value of different talent. They're understanding their organizations are so hungry for the talent rich pool that they have to use every resources they can to try to attract, scour, look for, bring in all this. It requires them to say, we have to make sure this place is a great place for people to show up. So, or if an organization is not focused on having ERGs, then an organization, I can't speak for all, but organizations not focused on having a diverse population. That's just the bottom line. Organizations, the big organizations out there have 17 ERGs, 15 ERGs, and they're funded. They have executive leadership helping them. They believe in the power of diversity, because diversity brings access. Access brings a difference of thought, and it allows you to be a force multiplier. So I know for a fact that organizations value ERGs. The only bad part is people don't know how to manage the ERG correctly, that it falls off. So they have to be managed correctly, well funded, and supported from the top down, not the bottom up. The top down got supported, and that's the way ERGs vibe. If you don't have an executive sponsor, a dedicated budget, you don't have a charter or a work plan, their ERG is not going to have the oomph you need it to have.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for promoting that I will still have a job to support ERGs. But what I think it's also, yeah, that's the crux of it, right? It's not just about we have the ERGs, not just about we started ERGs. If you want to see these benefits, there's a lot of work to be done. And and that's important to call out. I also wanted to ask something and I lost my train of thought. From the organizational perspectives, from the starting ERG support. Okay, I'll get it back. But thank you so much for chatting with me today. I appreciate the insights you bring into these. I appreciate the perspective you bring in. And if you want to connect with Dr. Kenya, go ahead and connect, send him a message, drop a note. Is on LinkedIn? I know some people might not be watching from on LinkedIn, but if you are having this conversation, you should be on LinkedIn. So thank you for joining us. And I look forward to learning more about your ERG work. If you are looking to continue to connect, if you're listening here, all things ERG, we have a monthly call every first Friday of the month at 10 a.m. And it's just a rich pool of ERG managers, DEI leaders, and our conversations are always centered around ERGs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope to continue to follow your ERGs. I know you're doing some amazing work and spotlight some of that. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
I tell you, that is great. Thank you for everybody. And I tell you, if you want another professional, Dr. Bing is out there.
Dr. Bing.
Dr. Bing, I tell you, she will blow your mind. So I'm calling you out, Dr. Bing. You got to get on Lola's show. I'm telling you right now, you are amazing. I'm calling you out. So if you're there, I'm calling you out to join the show because I'll be watching.
She's here. She's here. I see her. Well, thank you, everyone. It was great to have you here. Thanks, everyone watching online. Thanks, Dr. Bing, for staying all through. Bye.
Bye-bye.